All right, now that you have your four corners of your log cabin made, on page 3 of your notes, we're going to cut these stair steps off of the white. And so there's some important measurements that you need to make sure that you do. One is you need to be 1 1/4 inches away from the corner. So this is 1 1/4. So what I'm going to do on the back of my ruler is I'm going to mark, or I'm going to do this on the front so you can see where I'm marking. I'm going to mark 1 1/4 inches from the edge of the ruler on both ends. So you can see where that 1 1/4 is very easily on the camera. Okay? Now that 1 1/4 needs to go through the corners, through these two corners. So 1 1/4 goes through that corner and 1 1/4 goes through this corner. So I'm lining it up 1 1/4 on this point and 1 1/4 on that point. It should also give you a 1/4 inch seam beyond the tip of this center square, beyond that center tip of that center square. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to line everything up again. 1 1/4, 1 1/4, and you should have a 1/4 inch off here. Now, from past experiences, because we've done this block 2 different years, 2006 and 2016, things might not be perfect. So don't stew over it if it's not perfect. But those are the 3 measurements that we're looking for on page 3 of your notes. Once you get it all lined up, then you're going to set your hand nice and tight. You're going to take a really deep breath and you're going to trim. You're going to trim all those little parts off. And if you have a nice tight brand new blade, I would suggest that you put in your rotary cutter, then it's going to cut just perfect, and you have something like that. So I'm going to do that one more time so you can see what I'm talking about. So it's 1 1/4 on my ruler going through this corner, 1 1/4 of my ruler going through that corner, and I would like a good 1/4 inch beyond the tip, and I don't quite have it this time, so I'm going to try and pull that out just a hair, because sometimes I can pull on this corner just a little bit. You don't want to have to end up pulling too much. If you really have to tug it, then that just, like this one, see how it doesn't kind of get there? Let's go this other way and see if we can kind of get it a little better. And this happens, and I'm glad it's happening here on the camera so you can see it, what I'm doing to adjust it. I'm still going through these 2 points at 1 1/4 on my ruler, but now since I kind of pulled it in a little, I have a much better 1/4 inch right here, and then I'm going to cut. Since this isn't my quilt, I'm going to check one more time. Chrissy's filming me. She's holding her breath while I cut on her block. And I cut. So you're going to do that to all 4 sides. And then we're going to do some marking. Now these are all bias cuts now, so you want to be real careful with all those bias cuts. So you're going to need some kind of an angle cutter. And I have one that came out years ago, which is my favorite one. I like to use this one. I also have the Jenny Beyer Perfect Piecer. I think these are the ones we sold in 2016. These are the ones we sold in 2006. And by the time you get this, I have a new one that's coming out by Checkers, so it will look even different. Maybe at the end of this video, I'll show you what the new one looks like. But you need to find this angle, and this angle is 100. Oh, no, it's not. It's 100. There it is. See how nice it fits in right here and right here? And with the mechanical pencil, these are special rulers that have holes in them. You put your pencil in there and you mark it. Can you see that, Chrissy? Does that show up? That little mark right there?
Not a whole lot.
not a whole lot. I'll try and make it deeper, try to make it heavier on this one. So I put that in there. I'm gonna color it in so they can see it on camera. Normally I wouldn't do that. Now.
Yeah, there you can see it a little bit better.
So it's a 1/4 inch from this, and it's a 1/4 inch from this, and
Bring
it's,
it in a little. There you go.
okay? And so you'll have to mark each one of these at a 1/4 inch because we're getting ready to do a Y seam. So you're going to mark that, and this degree angle is 130. Here, let me do the perfect piecer because some of you have the perfect piecer at home. And I just have to, on this perfect piecer, it always takes me a second to get the right angle. I should have practiced this before I put it on here. There's the 100, there we go. There it is. So I have my 1/4 inch here. Oops, lost my pencil lid. I have my 1/4 inch here. So with my mechanical pencil, I go straight down. Okay? Now you're going to get all 4 of these cut and all 4 of these marked. And then you're going to bring your block out. And on page 3, where under block assembly, it talks about how big this block needs to be. I know that a lot of you are going to have different size blocks, but in a perfect world that none of us live in, when you get done constructing the block and putting the frames around your block, it's going to be 15.5. Some of you, it's going to be less than 15, and that's okay. Chrissy's is, see how she's a little over, she's a good 15.25 or so. So I'm going to make sure this diagonal line on my ruler goes through the center, this point and this point, and I'm going to start trimming her outside edge because your instructions say you're going to trim it down to 15 inches. So that's what we're going to do. So we're just taking off little bits off the edges. And then I'm going to take the 2 sides that I just trimmed, turn them over to my left and my bottom, and then do the same thing on the last 2 sides so that she has a perfect 15. And now I'm looking at this diagonal line. See how nice it goes through those intersections? So she'll have a nice square block. And trim that. I just thought I should have you trimming and me filming. How does she work that? All right. So now she has a 15-inch block. Now, what's important at this point is the size of your log cabins. In your notes, it says these should measure 12 inches. And we're talking about the long sides, 12 inches. I know some of you are going to be smaller and some of you might be bigger, and that's okay. It can be off. In the perfect world, that side is 12 inches and this side is 12 inches. And Chrissy did it just right. So those have to be 12 inches for this to fit in perfect. For this to fit in over here perfectly on one side. If yours is smaller, then you need to trim a little bit more off your block. If yours is bigger than, if yours is bigger than 12 inches here, then you need to trim this block bigger. Remember, it should be 15.5 when you get it done constructing it. So before you trim it down to 15, you need to know what this measurement is on your log cabins. If it's bigger than 12, you make this bigger. If it's less than 12, you're going to make this smaller. Is that clear as mud? If it is, you can always come into the shop and I'll be glad to measure your blocks for you and make sure you get it done right. Now I am looking for the 90 degree on my little ruler. Here, I'll use this one because probably more of you have this one. 90 degrees, and I'm going to put a dot here. Oops. hope I'm gonna put a dot there. My pencil lead wasn't long enough. So there's my pink dot, and I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna mark all 4 corners of this block at 90 degrees. That tells me where the 1/4" seams intersect, going both directions. And that's important to have that when we get ready to do Y seams. It's important to have these corners marked. I know that on camera you're probably not seeing this, but they are marked. They're marked well enough for me to see them, and I'm the critical one at this point. Okay, now I'm going to lay this on top of my block. I am going to do what's called stick pinning. I'm going to go right through my pink dot and right through the one on the block, and I want this pin to come out straight. I don't want it to come out like that. Okay, I want it to come out straight. Can you see that, Chrissy? Is that good?
Yeah.
So see how it's coming out straight? That's important because that means my 2 dots are lined up. And then on each side of those, I'm going to put a pin to hold those 2 dots together. See how it's still coming out straight? Now, I will warn you that you cannot do this with the Yellowhead Quilters pins. You need silk pins, and you need good quality silk pins to do this kind of work. And you might ask, where can I get those? You can get them here at the shop, okay? So you see what I've done, how this is coming straight out, and I've put a pin on each side, then I can pull this pin out. And you're going to do the same thing on this end. So I go through my little pink dots that I marked with my ruler, my 1/4" seams, and I have that. Now, I like to put my fingers, I'm putting this finger and my thumb underneath the pin to keep it coming out perpendicular. And then I put in my pins on each side of it. I need some music. I need to put some music in so that when they're watching me do this, they can hear. Now see, my pin's coming straight out, and I put a pin on each side, then I can pull this out. Now I want you to see, because Chrissy's measurements were so good, how flat that is. This is a biased edge. Remember that once you cut these log cabins, that's a biased edge. Now I'm going to want to put some pins in there, just so I don't stretch out that bias when she sews it. So everything stays nice and flat. And then once you start to sew, there's a couple ways to start. You can start up here and come back to your dot and then stitch over and take off. Or you can start right on the dot and do a securing stitch and stitch. Then you do your 1/4" all the way down, and you stop sewing at your dot. You do not go past the dot. You do not sew into the seam at all. You go to the dot and then back up 2 or 3 stitches to secure it and cut your threads. So we're going to let Chrissy go do that, and it's going to be miraculous when she comes back because she's going to have all 4 sides sewn on here.
We're ready.
Okay, Chrissy now has her 4 corners on it, and what makes the Y seam is that you have these little bitty parts that you have to connect. So we're going to fold the block in half, like that. You're going to make sure the block itself is out of the way, and you want to make sure that these seams are out of the way. You don't want to stitch through those seams. You only want to stitch through 2 layers of fabric. So here's my dot, and here's my dot on the other side. Okay? So I only want to stitch through this layer and this layer. If you stitch through all the seams, it's not going to be pretty when you turn it over. And I know you want it to look pretty. So we are going to start at the dot. So I'm going to take that out of the way. You're going to start at your dot, and you're going to sew out to the edge. You do not have to back tack out here. It's like a normal seam for a quilter. So you start at the dot and sew out. Now she hasn't finished this one, but she has finished this one. Is that not cute? Good job, Chrissy. This is why it's called a Y seam. Do you see how it makes a Y? Here's the top part of the Y, and here's the bottom part. Now the tendency is to press to one side, and you can do that if you want. But I like to press that last little seam open, and normally you would want to press all these seams towards the log cabin, but there are so many seams coming up each side, it's easier to press it towards the sashing, towards the center of the block. So you're going to press this short piece open, press these towards the center or towards the block itself so that it lays nice and flat. And then you'll just work your way around doing all the seams. Once you get that done on page 4 of your notes, in bold, black, underlined on the bottom of the page, it talks about you're going to frame this with your framing material, and this block needs to finish 28 and a half square. So you might have to adjust your framing fabric either bigger or smaller than what I tell you to cut it, because I'm telling you to cut 3-inch wide strips. You might need to cut them 3 1/4, or you might need to cut them 3 1/2, or you might need to cut them 2 1/4. It depends on what size your finished block measures out, and then you're going to frame it so that it will finish 28 1/2. That measurement's very, very important because it needs to be divisible by 4. 4 goes into 28 really nice. It does not go into 27 nice, and it does not go into 29 nice. So you want it to finish 28 1/2. And then you'll have your log cabin center. This is the ruler that I was talking about. This is our new ruler. Take the paper off, and you can see the angles of the ruler and the little holes where you put your pencil in. I'll zoom in a little so you can see the different angles that you can be marking. And this is made by Creative Grids. It's a non-slip angle finder. And in the shop through June and July 2021, we'll be having these on sale for 20% off.